Leadership's key role there is like a youngster's itself. It's more about pushing rather than pulling.
Hello and welcome to Up Close and Personal at Invoke Studio. I'm Rhea Mendiratta and I'm very excited to dive deep into education, equity and leadership today. I have with me today His Highness Yaduveer Krishnadatta Chamaraja Wadiyar ji. Sir, welcome to our show today and I'm very excited to get into conversation.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So, sir, I'm going to start by asking you that one question that everybody asks. And I'm really curious to know what you think leadership means and what role leadership has to play in the complex, convoluted world of education impact.
Well, personally, obviously, leadership means very many things. It can mean different things to very different people. From my perspective, obviously, I've been cast into sort of a leadership role wherein there are already very many people who are much more experienced, wiser, have the benefit of knowledge, but still, obviously, being in a role where you're asked to be take decisions, you ultimately comes there. So I think it depends from person to person. For someone like me, it's a matter of pushing from behind. Right. For others, it's a matter of pulling from the forward. Right. With specifically to the question, which is today's and this conference's topic with education, I think leadership's key role there is like a youngster's itself. It's more about pushing rather than pulling, because the difference being, as an entity that pushes, you are taking in the collective ideas that come from the benefactors of the education, right. That is the society itself, and you're pushing them forward with their will. Okay. You are just crafting around their aspirations a means for them to achieve those aspirations. Okay. So I think, that way it's a common ground for me and the sphere of education, especially in today's world. Right. And I think the leadership role there will need to evolve to simply being sort of an entity, an overarching entity that dictates the terms, right. to one that actually is more on the ground and, as I said, pushing from behind with understanding the collective will of society.
Right. That's thank you for sharing that, sir. I want to ask you from, you being a leader in philanthropic efforts, not just in education, but in many other sectors. I want to ask, how do you make sure that your philanthropic efforts are keeping in line with the changing trends in education, right? So we've evolved as a sector quite a lot from working on infrastructure and with teachers in the beginning to now actually intervening with the education leadership level. How do you make sure that you are up to date with what needs to be focused on?
First and foremost, being part and parcel of such wonderful conferences, I think the ideas that are presented here, right. the number of experienced individuals and those that are in the industry of education, of NGOs within education, right. and just the general sort of wealth of advisory that is here is itself, I think, something that's very laudable. So that would be one step. Of course, the other ways are you have to be your ear to the ground and right. understand for lack of a better word, the client you're supposed to be helping. Right. So in which case, in India especially, can be different from one village to the other, because there is so much history and each area could have its own unique history itself, that the dimensions change as you go from one place to the other. Right. So I think the idea of diversity in India is, while certainly its strength, has to be taken into account when doing these leadership aspects within the modern day context, because we very keenly want to preserve that diversity. Right. But at the same time, there has to be a way which we can cater to all of them in a sort of standardized way. Right, right. So that, I think, is a key area which we have to keep our ear to the ground to. In order to preserve that diversity, we have to have some standardization.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. You mentioned, coming to conferences like Invoke is something that helps you keep up to date. I also want to know how else do spaces like this, not just Invoke, but where we are inducing dialogue about things and we're there are competing thoughts on the table about the same topic. How has that diversity an important role to play in accelerating the education impact?
Well, I mean, such conferences, again, the network and the means by which NGOs can work is expanded greatly by such conferences. One thing which we NGOs sometimes tend to do, especially in education, is there's a lot of overlap, and that causes us to step on each other's toes. And while maybe some healthy competition is always good, in the sphere of social work, I think we are helping each other by not having much overlap and instead focusing on specific areas. So I think an area such as, or a conference such as this gets us to interact and understand that if certain organizations have a specialty in this area and they're doing so much more work there, maybe our resources are better utilized towards another aspect which aids in that effort. So rather than stepping on each other's toes and competing for the same sort of social service, which we are all trying to do a social good, we can do a greater social good by advancing it in more specialized ways and not tread on each other's territory.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to move us into our next segment, which is the rapid fire. It's me just asking you some fun questions. It's intended for us and our viewers to get to know you a little bit better. It's just some questions I'll ask you and you answer whatever comes to your mind first.
Sure.
So, sir, if you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
I think I'd like to run very fast.
Run very fast. Yeah. Okay. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Morning person or night owl?
Morning.
Okay. What's the most adventurous thing you've ever done?
It's the most adventurous thing I've ever done. I think, while I was in the States, I think finishing I don't call it adventurous, but certainly getting to a 25K was a big feat for me because it drained all the resources and I had no formal training. It was just doing it for the sake of keeping a number in the head. So I was out, a couple of days after that. So that felt like an adventure. I have done certainly things which are more adventurous, but nothing as taxing as that.
Okay.
Towards the body. Yeah.
If you could master any one skill instantly, what would it be?
I'd love to be, I think, I play the guitar, so I'd love to be as proficient as, say, like Eric Clapton or, any very guitar hero that's there.
Yeah.
So I'd love to be as proficient and as fast as they are and as melodious as they are.
Okay. Beaches or mountains?
Mountains.
Mountains. My last question is, what would be your message to teachers?
My message to teachers is, I think their responsibility is the greatest because as we are touting all the time in India, we have the youngest population in the world. So the onus of educating and having meaningful lives for that very young population is in great part on these teachers. So their responsibility is very great, and I think the respect and the tradition we have for the post of the teacher or the guru in India is so tremendous that I'm sure they will deliver in leaps and bounds what they have to, and it is only they that will ensure that the Indian tradition of being at the forefront throughout most of time, if just not for the last 3 or 4 centuries, will be seen again, and we'll have the idea of this again, India being at the forefront of the world through their means.
It's very hopeful. Thank you for sharing that lovely message. It was a pleasure talking to you today, sir. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you very much.
That was it for this segment of Up Close and Personal at InvoKid Studio. We'll see you next time.